Hi, my name is Kelly Nestor, and I'm going to talk with you today about 4 basic design principles that are known by the acronym CARP. It stands for Contrast, Alignment, Repetition, and Proximity. And I'm going to be using this book, the Non-Designer's Design Book, by Ms. Robin Williams, to illustrate each of these principles for you. So let's get started. The first design principle I'm going to discuss is that of contrast. The principle of contrast states that creating visual contrast between elements of a design will more effectively draw the viewer's eye to the page. Also, contrast can be used to organize information on a page, provide a focus point for the viewer, or call attention to an idea or concept. A piece of advice about contrast: usually the rule of thumb is going to be go big or go home, as a small degree of contrast will not have the intended impact. It will most likely just look like an error or a poor design choice. And for the example on contrast, I want to show you these newsletters. The first version of the newsletter appears rather plainly on the page. The only contrast is the size of the text of the main headline and the sub-headlines, but other than that, there's not much to draw your eye to the page. In the second version, however, the designer chose to reverse the text and background colors for the main headline and chose a much bolder text type. The color change and the bolder text type, which is repeated in the sub-headlines through the page, creates a noticeable contrast from the rest of the body of the text, and so the viewer's eye is drawn more effectively to these elements, allowing the reader to follow the piece more effectively. The second design element I'll discuss is that of alignment. The principle of alignment states that nothing should be placed on the page without purpose for its location. Each element should have a visual connection with at least one other element of the design. Alignment helps the viewer mentally organize information and make information connections between elements of the piece. In terms of advice, the most popular alignment schemes are left justified or flush left, centered, and right justified or flush right. When in doubt, use left justified alignment because in English we read left to right. Right justified alignment can be effective for limited text or for images, and centered text is the hardest to read because the viewer's eye must find a new starting point for each line of text, so it should be used very sparingly and for very limited amounts of text only. For the example on this principle, you can see on the left that we have a small amount of left justified text that has the straight alignment on the left side, and again is the most viewer friendly for large amounts of text in English. Here on the right, we have a small amount of text that is right justified and has the straight alignment on the right-hand side. And although the viewer's eye must find a new starting point for each line of text, the end point for each line is right aligned on an edge, so small to medium amounts of text can be effectively read when they are right justified. This bottom example text is the centered alignment, and again is best used with only a small amount of text because the viewer's eye must work harder to find both the start and end points for each line of text, creating unnecessary cognitive load, especially for learning items. The third design element that I'll discuss today is repetition. The principle of repetition states that some element of the design should be repeated throughout the design in order to make the piece more consistent. Repetition, like the other design principles, is used to help organize information and guide the viewer's eye along the page in an effective way. For advice, repeated use of elements such as the same text type, colors, borders, or related images, such as clip art that's drawn in the same style, even if the images are different, will ensure that your design appears cohesive and intentional. For the example, we have 3 flyers here that are pieces of information used to communicate meetings and appointments in a workplace. Even though the information on each piece varies, the repetition of the color block background, the use of the same text type, and the use of the similar clip art characters make these individual pieces into a visually consistent series of communication for the employees of this workplace. The last design principle I'll discuss is that of proximity. The principle of proximity states that related elements should be grouped together because visual or physical closeness of those elements implies a relationship between the elements on the page. Proximity is another way for the designer to organize information on the page and to guide the viewer's eye through the elements in an effective way. For advice, as with contrast, the common advice with proximity is that it should be big and bold when it is used. Don't leave any room for guesswork from your viewer about which elements on the page are related and which elements are not related. The first example is a set of images where proximity is used to define the relationship between these two people on the page. In the second image, where they're placed close together, it is clear that they know each other and are likely mother and son. In the second example, this is a set of images that contain only text, but also shows the power of proximity to visually organize information for the viewer. In the first image, where all the text lines are evenly spaced apart, nothing is done to define the different elements of these lists of items. But in the second image, each list has a tighter proximity within it, and there's more visual space between each list, which makes the viewer intuitively understand that each list, although may be related, is a separate element on the page. I hope you've enjoyed watching my video about the 4 basic principles of design: contrast, alignment, repetition, and proximity. Thanks for watching.